It is so good to be at your church today. Really wished I could have been here last week to see the celebration of Pastor John Boston. A good pastor, a good leader, and we are grateful for what he has led your church thus far to do. You still have a mission to complete and some work to do. Is that all right? And so we want to make sure over the next month that your church does not stray away, split away, or go away because you feel, well, we don't have a pastor, so we're just going to do our thing. You tell everybody this is their home. Let me say that one more time. Maybe this y'all home? Okay. All right. Tell everybody this is our home, and we still got work to do. And you're not on leave because there's no pastor here. Amen. And so we want you to be a part of what we're doing. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Father God, thank you for being our God. Now as I prepare to speak to your people, I please ask that you would hide me behind the cross of Calvary so that only Jesus Christ may be seen, felt, and heard. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. You know, we live in a world where they tell us that the customer is always right. You're taught in business that when someone comes into your business, that you should be able to meet their needs and whatever complaint they have, that you ought to change your practices or at least let them know you hear them so that their complaint is registered. That's good when you're going to Kroger or J.C. Penney or Nordstrom's, but that's bad theology when it comes to God. Amen. And so when we talk about complaining, wherever we are to whom we're complaining with, it's affecting our relationship with God. How many of you like to hear people complain? And so I just want to take some time. I'm not going to try to necessarily finish this today. I think I can have the opportunity to come back one more time before your pastor gets to the church, so I'm not going to try to weary you. Now you can smile some more. Amen. Weary you with a long presentation, but I am going to get through enough for it to make sense to you. You know, when you're complaining, nobody wants to hear that. And I don't know about you, but when you're going someplace, you're in a marriage, you're driving down the road, you're in a church, the journey's too long for people to be complaining. It's going to be hard this morning. Turn to the person next to you and say, shut up and quit complaining. Some of y'all like that. Well, some of y'all said that. I didn't even look up because I didn't want to see nobody's face. But some of y'all, I could hear it. It was just in you. Shut it up. Amen. See, the journey from bondage and slavery will always take you to a land of blessing and prosperity. The children of Israel were on their way to the promised land. They had every intention of leaving there and going to a better place. God had taken them out from the Egyptians, and as they were beginning to leave, right from the very beginning, they began to complain. We complain about the issues we face while traveling, not understanding that it's the safest route that the Lord is taking us through. See, our problem is that we desire that we want to take the route we want because the one that has been orchestrated for us seems to be too difficult, too hard, and therefore we design where we want to go, thus causing a struggle between God and ourselves that lead to more difficult times. The devil is satisfied for us to take up his challenge of complaining to the Lord concerning his directions. But I have come to understand that the journey is too long to listen to his mouth disseminating poison. When you begin to want to complain the next time, I'm going to ask that you would just stop yourself. Just say, I'm not going to do it this time. See, the reason why the devil wants us to complain in the church is because it keeps us separated one from another. God's agenda is for his church to become one. To become what? One with each other and one with Jesus and one with the Father. Complaining separates us from God. And so in John, the 17th chapter, Jesus prays that his church would become one. He says, Lord, let them be one as you and I are one. And when we have a situation in our communities, in our home, we cause the presence of God to leave by murmuring and complaining. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 14 and 15, verse 14 says, do what? On the screen, do what? Do everything without what? Wait a minute. It says do everything. Everything you do ought to be without grumbling or arguing. Have mercy. Verse 15, so that you may become blameless and what? Children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Now, if the generation was warped and crooked when Paul wrote this, you know it's totally jacked up now. We have individuals complaining about everything. Paul is writing to the church at Philippi, counseling them that complaining about their situation in life wasn't going to make things better. Blaming someone for failures and glossing over successes would eventually destroy any family atmosphere. The reason why some couples get a divorce is because they're always murmuring and arguing. And so then they begin not to like the atmosphere they're in and want to shift it and change it and blame it on somebody else, but you can't argue all by yourself. Philippi became an infamous city for discord. In 42 BC, Mark Antony and Octavia defeated Brutus and Cassius, and they assassinated Julius Caesar in a battle at Philippi. Retired soldiers then were placed there to ensure loyalty to Rome. Mark Antony gave the new colony the highest privilege obtainable by Rome's municipality, and therefore the colonists could buy, own, or transfer property and maintain the right to civil lawsuits. They were also exempt from poll taxes and land taxes. Amen. The religious life of those in Philippi was marked by synchronistic practices, which means blending the holy with the profane. See, division began getting into the church at Philippi because individuals then began to bring things that were not to be mixed in with God into God's word. Then, as it was brought into God's word, naturally, the attitude of those in the church was to defend the church. But when they began to defend the church, individuals began to complain about the church. And as they began to complain about the church now lost its family atmosphere with those who remained in the church. See, you don't have to defend God's church because God's church is defended by God. God is the author of the church. And as we go through this morning, you will find out that God doesn't need your help to maintain the spiritual integrity of his community. All we have to do is worry about ourselves. Let me say that one more time. All we have to do is worry about ourselves and pray for everybody else. And while you're praying for everybody else, you ought to pray for yourself along the way. See, sometimes as a church community, because we see things that we don't like, we tend to think that the church is going to the dogs. But let me tell you, if you come to church and the church is in you, then you will find that there are holy angels that are standing around you, and you will become a participant in what is holy. It bothers me sometimes when I come to church, minister of praise, I come to church and individuals cannot participate in the praise and worship of God because they don't like what's going on. Let me tell you, the church is not for you to come and feel good about you. The church is for you to come and lift up the name of Jesus. If we come to church to do anything else, we're going to begin complaining to each other about what's going on, because what I like, you don't like, and you don't have to. Let me say that again. You don't have to like what I like, and I don't have to like what you like for us to be one. Because you have your turn at what happens, and I have my turn at what happens, and then we can celebrate together. See, these soldiers came in, and it began to set up an attitude in the community that the church began including in its practices. The people in Philippi learned to worship Julius and Augustus and Claudius and the Egyptian gods as well. One purpose for writing this book was to address the discord and division that arose in the church and homes concerning issues that could have been solved by humility and unity. The reason why we argue and complain is because it's a sign that we do not have humility. You can say you're humble all you wish, but humble, it comes out in actions and deeds and not from the mouth. Humility simply says it's not about me, but it's about someone else. The Philippians had allowed an enemy to slip into the church, causing them to complain and argue about their fellowship. Not understanding God was working in them and on them and with them and others as well. If God is working on you and is not finished, then probably he's working on somebody else and not finished with them either. So if you want God to be patient with you, you have to be patient with others. It's not about how long individuals have been in the church that dictates what they will do and how they will change. It's by how the Holy Spirit decides how he wants to move them along the journey. God's journey has a different time clock than my journey. I'm so glad that the word says, be confident of this very thing, that the work that I began in you, I will complete until the day of redemption. That simply means that whatever work he doesn't finish with me now, when he blows the trumpet and he calls me up to meet him in the sky, then he will complete that work at that time. So in the meanwhile, will you let me walk my walk so that God can take me along the way? See, we murmur, and this word murmur means a secret debate. It means a closet meeting. It means it's not the meeting you have in the church, it's the meeting you have after church. That's where the real decisions are made. They're not made in the board meeting. They're made outside the board meeting, because the real action takes place with the power brokers. Power brokers are not always on the church board. Sometimes individuals claim they are humble, and I don't have to be on the church board. Don't select me to do that, knowing that they're going to throw a monkey wrench into what's going on behind the scenes, because they are murmuring. They are in a secret debate. They're in a closet meeting. Arguing means back and forth reasoning. It is reasoning that is self-based, is based on what I want to do and what I see need to be happening, not on what God has disclosed, what he wants the community to do. The problem that the church has today, if you would allow me to go there just for a moment, is that we don't tend to pray to God and to ask God what his decision is. We make up our minds that this is what ought to be done because we know more than everybody else. But I want to remind you that your wisdom is not the wisdom of God. And therefore, in order for any church community to move forward, that community needs to be based on, centered on, and focused in on being led by Christ along the journey. The reason the children of Israel had to travel 40 years rather than 7 to 11 days is because they wanted to make up their own minds about the journey. Can I tell you, God has your journey planned out for you, and as long as you are in his hands, then you know that everything shall be all right. Ephesians 4:1 says, I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. You have been called to be children of God, so act like children of God. You are called to be saints, so act like saints. When you have been called by Jesus Christ has given in your life a mission to complete. And in completing that mission, you can't do it all by yourself. In order to complete the mission and the gifts that God has given you, you have to join up with somebody else who's doing something else that doesn't seem like it's fitting with what you're doing. See, the church is like a jigsaw puzzle. You have to find the pieces and put them together until you finally get a picture. But what most of us like to do is just throw in a few pieces and then decide we're completed with the task and then go out and carry out our agenda. But can I tell you, you can't carry out your agenda and make it to the kingdom of God. And God has some strange ways of handling his agenda. The Apostle Paul expresses this same concept to the Ephesians. He tells the church, don't allow yourself to get sucked up into trivial matters. See, the church sometimes gets sucked up into trivial matters. You know, we decide which plan is the best plan. The best plan is whichever one you all decide you want to work on. There is no better plan, you know, because I come up with plan A and you come up with plan B and somebody comes up with plan C. The best plan may be ABC. But we tend to want things the way we want them. And in doing things the way we want them, we get caught up in the triviality of church. We try to make everything as if though it is salvific in nature. Can I tell you, most of the music in the church is not salvific in nature. Most of the dress in church is not salvific in nature. At the end of the day, we all admit it doesn't matter what you wear if you get here, as long as you get here. Now, I understand that when you come to church, I don't want to have to spend the entire Sabbath day doing like this. I'm talking to you and I have to look up to the ceiling, because if I look directly at you, then my brain begins to move in unholy ways. I see y'all acting like, come on now. And I'm not just talking about women. See, we often get on women's dress, but we don't talk about the way men dress. I saw some brother come in one day with his pants so tight. I said, hey, brother, what's going on? He said, what? I said, your pants. Oh, he said, oh, yeah, these are skinny pants. I said, well, you need to take them off because you ain't skinny. See, the purpose of the church community is for us to stay close to one another. Turn to your neighbor and say, stay close to me. That's a serious issue in the 21st century church. We drift away from one another, and individuals can't see we are Christ's disciples. See, love can't be seen in the church if we can't agree that God is awesome. Unfortunately, we delay the work of God in us when we drift from one another. I heard someone say in Sabbath school this morning, when we don't like the church, we stay home. That's the time when you need to come to church the more. Because that means God is working on you and working in you. God can't work on you without you being irritated and agitated. You can't clean clothes without them going through agitation and irritation. The best wash machines are the ones that agitate and irritate and turn things upside down. I have this washer at home, and I was just looking at it the other day because it said it doesn't need much soap for it to work. And so I just put the soap in and I turned it on and I just sat on the stool and I began to watch it. And it would turn this way and then it would groan and grind and it would turn back this way. And then it would flip and it would turn. And you have to set the settings on the wash machine with how much clothes you put in the washer. And the more clothes you put in the washer, the more agitation and irritation it is. The reason why God has to shake some of us up so much is because we need to be clean real well, and he has to agitate and turn it up to get what's in us out of us. I'll say amen all by myself. About a generation of people began to deal with hurt and declare they don't need anyone. We come to a theology in the church where we think we can get to heaven all by ourselves. I don't need the church. I don't need them to get to heaven. Yes, you do. God's word says, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together as the manner of some is, as you see the day approaching. In other words, what God is saying, when you see the last days coming and you think that we're in them and we preach that we're in them, then God declares that you need to be at church more and more and more, and quit trying to find a church where people don't bother you. There's no such thing. If you find that church, let me know. Because wherever you go, somebody's going to bother you and work your nerve. All you got to do is look in the mirror and you work your own nerve. See, we drift away from each other, and Eve drifted from the side of Adam, and Adam drifted from the side of God. When the Lord called them, they refused to respond because their walk had taken them away from God. We have all kinds of meetings, but we never have a meeting to teach us how to walk with God. Seventh-day Adventist Church has more meetings than you can throw a stick at. Got a meeting for everything. You're going to eat. We got to have a meeting for the menu. Then after you have the meeting for the menu, then you got to have another meeting to change the menu from the first meeting that you decided to have. So therefore, we don't get anything accomplished. I'm looking for the church to have a meeting one day where we come in and talk about how we have a walk with God, how we talk with God. Because when we learn how to walk and talk with God, then we can be one and we will make it to the kingdom of God. Ephesians 4:2 says, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in what? In love. And this is not your googly type of love. This kind of love means even when I can't deal with you, don't want to deal with you, I will deal with you. That's love. Love is not where you make me feel good and I make you feel good. That's why some of our marriages are messed up, because we want each other to always make us feel good. If somebody always making you feel good, you might need to go check out something. You know, every once in a while, I want my wife to tell me, I'm upset with you. Not too often. But every once in a while, that way I know, okay, things are straight. Come in telling me you love me every day. You doing the right thing. I'm checking my food. I don't know about you. When I have potlucks, I go to people's house and eat. If you ain't eating it, I ain't eating it. Y'all can laugh all y'all want to. Ephesians, verse 3. Ephesians, verse 3. Eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Want to maintain what? Unity is not uniformity. I don't have to dress like you, act like you, be like you to be one with you. You can wear red and I can wear pink and we can still be one. I can sing anthems and you can sing hymns and somebody else can sing gospel and we can still be one. I don't have to like your gospel to be one with you. You can't make me like gospel if I don't like it. But I can still be one with you because I will tolerate you. Notice how Paul concludes this sentence, in the bond of peace. In other words, what Paul is trying to get to the church at Philippi, don't be arguing about everything. Ephesians 4:4. There is one body. There is what? There is what? Can I tell you, folks say, it's not that many Seventh-day Adventists in the city of Columbus. And I said, we can settle that because we are one what? We can take all the churches, put them in one building. You ain't got to worry about no choir. Because if you take the 7 to 8 y'all got, take the 10 or 12 somebody else got, the 3 or 4 somebody else got, put them all together, every week you will have a choir. You would have a church that would have about at least 2,000 or 3,000 people in it. But I can't do that because I have to be elder. The Lord has called me to be elder. He's called me. I know he's called me. And if we do that, I may not be able to be that. If that's what keeps us from becoming together because of positions, then we're going to be traveling in this wilderness for a long time. I've determined a long time, well, not too long ago. That makes it sound like it was about 50 years ago. I just determined that positions are not all that. You know, it took me a while to figure this out. When I had a church of 8 members, I got the same salary, the same perks that I got when I had 1,600 members. I didn't get a raise because I had 1,600 members. I just got more work. And I was just as happy. I'm pastoring a 1,600-member church. And my name is Pastor William Joseph. And then one day I started thinking, my friend that had the 8 members, he's at home. And I was still out visiting the sick until 11 or 12 at night, because in 1,600-member church, you got at least 90 people sick every week. At least. And then while I'm bragging about how many members I have in the church, where they only have one person that's working on their character, I got about 50 that's working on my character. And I started asking, Lord, why? He said, I'm putting you here because you need more work on your character than they do. And then I began to realize that having positions ain't all that. Hey, let's all come together, have 12 pastors. That's how many of us in the city have 12 pastors on the staff. But then I know we have another problem. Who's going to be the leader? This is one body and one spirit, just as you were called to the one hope that belongs to your call. Oneness is not obtained because we attend the same church or because we say we believe in Christ. Oneness is based on accepting our call to become a part of the body, working to reform and revive where we live, work, and play. If some of us would work as hard transforming our lives as we try to transform the church would be all right. When we face that the Lord Almighty is refashioning our characters, then we won't have an attitude of superiority, but rather humility, esteeming others better than ourselves. Ephesians 4:5 goes on to say, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. See, when we have oneness in the church, everything runs smoothly. I've come to the conclusion the reason why we don't have more baptisms in the church is because we don't have more oneness in the church. Well, let me say it this way. People will come to the church expecting to feel love, see love. Because you shake my hand doesn't say that you love me. That just says you're polite. If you love me, then you're going to care about me, and you won't be afraid to take me to your home to eat with you. No, Pastor, you're going too far, because wisdom, you don't bring everybody into your house. Yeah. But I listen to the reason why we say we don't bring everybody in the house, because they're going to steal from us. They're going to take something from us. They're going to be scoping out what we got. First of all, you give a little bit too much credit to yourself. That somebody want what you have. The second thing is, don't we trust in God? If I trust in God, then I believe that God is protecting me, placing a hedge about me, mine. So if he's placing a hedge about mine, if somebody comes in and take it because they needed it. Oh, I know that's hard. You say, yeah, I need it too. Yeah, I know we do. Okay, it'll catch up tomorrow. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. Ephesians 4:6. One God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Paul wants to make it clear as we move into this journey that God is in control of everything that we're about. You have what you have because of God. You are where you are because of God. You have what you have because of God. God has given you your education. He has given you your job. He has given you your health. He has given you your life. Whatever you have, it's because of God. You didn't pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and so therefore don't look for anybody else to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. If you got up the ladder, it's because God brought you up the ladder. You didn't get up to the ladder because you had more education or intelligence than other people. You just had a greater opportunity. I can legitimately say that I probably have more degrees than most people. But those degrees I was not able to achieve because I did something, is because of what God allowed me to accomplish. Because when I didn't have money to go to school, my baby knows, my wife can tell you, when I didn't have the money to go to school, God put the money on the bill. I didn't know where the money came from. I was walking in ready to plead my case, coming in to talk to him, and the policy already says you have to pay up front to enter in the class. And so I was coming hoping that my smooth talking was going to work this thing out. I had already practiced my speech on how over the next 10 weeks I'm going to get my money together, and you can count on it being in by the time I get here next quarter. And I went in and walked in with $700 when my bill was $2,200. And when I got in there, I began to get ready. I pulled out my little $700. I brought it in cash. I didn't bring a check. I wanted them to know I was serious. And I brought it in cash, and I was getting ready to say, now here's what the deal is. And she says, Mr. Joseph, you only owe $700. I said, well, sometimes you need to learn how to keep your mouth shut, because I can't believe it. Even though I've talked to God about it, I cannot believe it. And so I asked, I said, well, are you sure you pulled up the right account? And she says, well, what's your student ID? I gave her them. She said, that's you. I said, well, what happened? She said, we see that the friends of Pastor Joseph has placed on your bill $1,700. I can have all I think I got. If I didn't have that money, I wasn't getting in school. See, God can make a way out of no way. He deals with dealing the impossible. And the children of Israel, they should have understood that God was working this thing out for them when he brought them out of Egypt. When they came out of Egypt, they didn't get out because Pharaoh wanted to let them go. They came out because God moved and worked and began to change their situation. In order for them to get out of Egypt, God had to move to let them out. And then when they got out of Egypt, they began moving on. And I could imagine as they were going along, they were singing, we're free from Egypt. And then Moses took them to where the Lord wanted them to go. Moses took them down on a peninsula. That's not good battle strategic. That's not good battle plans. That's not good strategy to trap yourself till you have no way of escape. See, sometimes we think that God has placed us in a difficult situation, but the reason we find ourselves in that situation is so that God can let us know you didn't do it. Your friends didn't do it. Your mama couldn't do it. Your job didn't do it. I'm the only one who can get you out of the mess that you were in. And so when they got to the Red Sea, the children of Israel saw Pharaoh's army moving toward them, and then they began to complain. See, if God can bring you out of Egypt, he can keep you out of Egypt. If he can take you out of trouble, he can keep you out of trouble. But they begin to complain that Moses, why you bring us down here? We could have died on there in Egypt. If I was God, I would have said, send them. No, you. Send them back to Egypt. Let them go back to Egypt. Let Pharaoh deal with them whatever way they was. But God says, let me show you what I can do. So the Bible says that the angel of the Lord went from the front of the camp and moved to the back of the camp. And he was light to the children of Israel and darkness to Pharaoh's army. Now, if I was Pharaoh's army and it was so dark that I couldn't see anybody, but I could hear everybody, what most people don't realize is that they think it was a large gulf in between Pharaoh's army and the children of Israel. But this line was razor sharp. On this side, it was Pharaoh's army. Just on this side were the children of Israel. See, if I was the children of Israel, I wouldn't have stayed in the back of the camp. I would have started moving toward the front of the camp. The reason why some of us can't find our way out of sin and we complain about the trouble we're in is because we're comfortable staying at the back of the camp. Even though the Lord has your back at the back of the camp, it's a good thing to move to the front of the camp. Well, while the angel of the Lord was separating, watch this, because we tend to think that God can only do things if he's there. But if God is at the back of the camp, don't forget what was going on in front of the camp. In front of the camp, the Lord was telling Moses, hold up your rod, spread it out over the sea. Tell the people to watch the glory of the Lord. See, our problem is that we're too busy trying to watch everything else. We're trying to watch what Donald Trump is doing. We're trying to watch what the Democrats are doing. We're trying to watch what the Republicans are doing. Can I tell you? Start watching the glory of God. As they began watching, the sea began to open up, and the children of Israel began to walk through on dry land. It wasn't swampy land. It wasn't mushy land. It was dry land. Now, when they got through, the angel of the Lord now moves back to the front of the camp. Because as long as he was at the back of the camp, Pharaoh would have to stay where he was staying. But see, as foolish as Pharaoh was, watch what he does. You ain't read nothing about Pharaoh going into the Red Sea. I had to pause on that one. So y'all, you wonder why I said I ain't eating until I see you eat? Because, see, some people tell you to do something they ain't going to do. See, since you on the board, why don't you tell them that this is what they need to do? No, I'll place you on the agenda. Come on. You ain't getting me out there. And so now we find Pharaoh's army starts going through the sea. Now, see, God gives everybody's warnings. Because when you read the story, it says that the wheels of the chariots began falling off. That was my first sign that I'm turning back and go back. I don't care what Pharaoh say. This ain't working. It's bad enough I'm already down there in the sea. I'm looking at something I ain't never seen before. Wall of water on my left. Wall of water on my right. This ain't right. And Pharaoh tells them, go get the children of Israel. See, you got to have sense for yourself. Pharaoh, since you the leader, come on in here and lead us on cross. No, he back there telling go. When the last child of Israel gets out of the water, then the walls of water crash in, all of Israel's problems are gone. Egypt has been totally annihilated. They don't have to worry about going back in slavery because ain't nobody to come get them. Everybody is gone. I like this part because this is the one we use in church when we want to do something. Miriam and all them, they started praising God and shouting, and they were singing. And the Bible says they have tambourines. I know it wasn't no they wasn't Seventh-day Adventists yet. They weren't yet. But they was over there, they was singing and clapping and praising God. Now watch this. They had just complained the night before. Now all of a sudden they praising. Oh, what a mighty God we serve. The praise leader didn't even have to stand up and get them started. All Miriam had to do was just hit the tambourine. And they were, what a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. I mean, they were getting down. They were having a great time in worship. And then, just 3 days later, I ain't talking about a week. I'm talking about, it wasn't even 3 full days, 3 days later, they start complaining again. Just 3 days later, God has brought them out of Egypt. He's destroyed their enemies. He's taken away their troubles. He's gotten rid of their problems. But now they're complaining again. Moses, why did you put us on this peninsula? Didn't you see what God did? He brought us here so those dummies would follow us. And when they followed us, did you see what he did? Oh, yeah. We thirsty now. Well, y'all have to get the rest when y'all invite me back. This journey is too long for us to complain. It's just too long. I've come too far from where I started from. My God has shown me too many things that he can do and will do. I come to church so I can release some of my burdens. I come here so I can find some healing. I come here because every place else I have to go, people critique what I do and why I do it. But I should be able to come here, and if I want to eat a piece of cake that don't have no milk in it, no butter in it, I don't need to hear you talking about my piece of cake. Likewise, if you want to eat some with sour cream icing and 2 pounds of butter, that's your business. You know, I told people a while back, don't mess with my diet. Just, y'all can talk about everything else, but don't mess with what I eat. And I was making fun of people. You got to be careful what you do. I was making fun of people. Tell them, y'all eating that stuff. I'm eating my cheese. Butter in my cake. Watch it melt in my mouth. Then I started getting sick. So I decided I'm going to become vegan. Because I found out I get a little healthier. See, when I was 20, I wasn't so concerned about dying the next day. At 20, I figured I had a whole lot of years in front of me. But now that I'm 60 and folk around me 58 to 63 are dying, What do you want? Vegan patty, please. The things that we complain about have a habit of coming back to bite us. Central is a wonderful church. It's a great congregation. And over the past 3 years, the Lord has allowed you to do some mighty and awesome things. But you are a community that has to establish oneness. Because in that oneness is the presence of God. He's where people are wanting and trying to be one. It doesn't mean that I shouldn't speak up when something is wrong. But what it does mean is when the church community says it's going right, and I think left is the way to go, I'm going right with you, and I'm going to work harder than you are to work to make it work. And if it fails, I'm not going to say I told you so. I'm going to lock arms with you, and now let's try something else. Is that okay? If you want to be one in the Lord, if you want to establish a community that has oneness within it, if you want in your home for it to have oneness, you want to be one with your community, I invite you to just stand where you are and say, Lord, that's me. I want to establish this oneness, and I recognize that you have brought me out of some difficult situations. And by chance, if someone wants to be one with God, whether you're returning to the household of faith or just new to the household of faith, I invite you from wherever you are just to step out and come and take one of the elders' hand and say, I'm ready to be one with God because I want to have one faith, one Lord, one baptism. I want to be one all in all with Him. That's why we have churches. Churches are not so we can be clubs where we come just to do the things we like. It's a community to help us to establish oneness in and with Christ, to take on a mission that He has given us to do for those around us. Won't you come? Won't you come? Talking to you right now, just you. I'm coming, I'm coming. You know God has done a whole lot for you. He's really taken care of you. And He took care of you for such a time as this. Won't you come?
Come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe He's brought me this far to leave me.
Our Heavenly Father, I just ask right now that your Spirit will come into this place and change us into one with you and the Father so that we can be one with each other. I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity of coming here to be able to share the portion of this word so that your name might be glorified. And I pray that somebody might have received a blessing that will help strengthen their faith and their walk with you. And we'll be careful, oh God, to give you all the glory and the honor. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen, amen. If the elders would allow me to come back, then I can finish the rest of it. And so you can see what those complaints really are and how they affect our lives. May God bless you as we continue to walk with Jesus.